Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for having a chat to me today. Really appreciate you giving us some time. But firstly, I wanted to chat to you around how Pride Cup started. So we both know, but some people in our competition might not know, that our very own Jason Ball, who played for Yarra Glen, was a big driver in the beginning of the movement. But in your own words, how did you see this whole thing coming about?
Yeah, so Pride Cup started as the initiative of a group of players at the Yarra Glen Football Netball Club who wanted to do a really vibrant, visible and inclusive show of support for their teammate, Jason Ball, when he came out as gay to his teammates. For Jason, he'd played, footy at that club his whole life. His family were and still are super heavily involved. And I think that's a really relatable experience for a lot of people who play sport in Australia. Your whole family and community are connected, or your best mates play with you. And that was certainly Jason's experience. But he unfortunately didn't feel safe to be openly gay in that environment because of a culture of casual homophobic joking, which I think is tolerated in a lot of team sport and has been for a long time. And when Jason shared that with his teammates, that had been his experience and that he didn't feel safe to be himself, they did something about it, and they decided to throw that first Pride Cup. They had a trophy, they had rainbow arcs on the 50s, and they did a really visible and inclusive celebration of Jason and the LGBTIQ community. And kind of from that moment, the Pride Cup concept was born. Today, we've worked with over 1,000 different teams in 30 different codes, and I guess Jason and the Yarra Glen Football Club's legacy lives on.
Yeah, amazing. It has grown substantially, and even last year celebrating the 10 years down at Yarra Glen was really awesome as well. I was very lucky to be there for that day. Can you tell me a little bit about the work you do with communities and clubs as the engagement director and what your role entails?
Yeah, sure. So I was lucky enough to start with Pride Cup a couple of years ago. My role as engagement director basically means that I am the person who supports all of the amazing teams and clubs and leagues who work with us to execute a Pride Cup game day. So that might look like one game day like the Yarra Glen event, where there's several different teams participating at the one venue in a day, and the club makes a real song and dance about it and makes the whole venue really visible, vibrant and inclusive. Or that might look like a league-wide Pride round, which of course now your league do. So my sort of job is whoever comes to me asking for support in how to execute a prideful game day, or how to celebrate the community, or how to invite in community to be a part of the day. That's sort of my job, to facilitate that and support them to make a day that feels really authentic to them and their community. And then I also do LGBTIQ inclusion education with those clubs. We know that a team who does the education piece, invites community in to participate and collaborate, and executes a vibrant, visible game day, are likely to see a 40 to 50% reduction in homophobic language in just that first year alone. So we know what we're doing works.
Yeah, totally. And then can you tell me what actually drew you to this role? Was it because of your own passion for sport and the idea of being able to make real and visible change in communities?
Yeah, so I grew up playing softball. And then I picked up a footy myself when I was 19. And whichever sport of those two that I've played, I've always had really out and proud role models in my team who were always proud of their queer identities, who always introduced their partners to our team. And I had many captains and leaders over that kind of junior period of my career who were proud queer women. And that meant that I always saw myself and a future for myself in those roles and in those sports. And so I never questioned whether I could be a captain or whether I could be 100% of myself in those environments, knowing that I was a queer person. Unfortunately, we know that that's not the experience for most LGBTIQ people, and we know that a lot of people don't see themselves represented in teams and sort of don't see themselves getting opportunities to be leaders because they don't always see themselves represented in those roles. I played footy at the Collingwood Football Club and captained that side for a few years, and now I'm at the Darabin Falcons, who are obviously a really fabulous and inclusive club. And that's, I guess, what makes me so passionate about what I do, because I've always had that opportunity, and some of the best opportunities that I've had have been, as captains of these clubs. And, my wife's been able to present me with my Guernsey in front of my whole team before. My daughter now, Daisy, who's 8 weeks old, she comes into the circle at the end to sing the song with us. And they're really core memories that I've created because my teams have always been so embracing of me. So that's what makes me so passionate about working for Pride Cup and what I hope to see for everyone who plays sport.
Yeah, I love that. That's so nice. You mentioned before about the 40 to 50% reduction when, they have a Pride Cup and they engage in those education sessions, which is obviously very important. But part of the survey that I've looked at also said that only 6% of young LGBTQIA plus people participate in team sports because they don't feel safe. So while there's absolutely been progress, would you say there is still obviously more work to do in this space?
Yeah, so the Out on the Field study, which was the first international study into the experiences of lesbian, gay and bisexual athletes, found that 80% of people had witnessed or experienced homophobia in sport. That was released in 2015. They redid the survey about 5 years later and found that although in society across the world we'd come a long way, in sport specifically, those numbers hadn't really changed. So we know the problem is still there and that it exists. We also know that we are doing a lot of great work in this space, and there are so many great teams who are becoming more safe and more inclusive, and the numbers tell us that. But again, it's not just about those senior teams, it's about the whole pathway, it's about every team who plays community or social or elite sport, making sure they're taking responsibility for their own environment, investing in education, and making sure that it's also about celebration as well, so that everyone who is queer or LGBTIQ who walks into a community sporting club knows that that's a place for them. So yeah, there's a bit of work to do, I think, still. Particularly, I think, around trans inclusion, and we're having really difficult conversations, on a massive scale at the moment around trans people, and we just want to make sure that we continue to fight for our whole community, not just key sections of it.
Yeah, absolutely. In your own mind, what does the future look like for Pride Cup? Are there any goals or outcomes in mind as you guys continue with this movement?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we do, we know it works and it's really accessible. So we believe that any club who wants to host a Pride Cup at the community level, who wants that education, should be able to access it. We don't want the sort of financial constraints of a community sporting club to limit them from accessing the tools they need to create a safe environment. So, we provide that opportunity to any team who wants to participate. And in that, I guess what we're trying to do is reach as many teams across the country as we can with our message and with that support, so that they can take it into their own hands and make sure that LGBTIQ people are celebrated. So what does that look like? I mean, I'd love to see Pride Cup continue to grow. I'd love that to go beyond 1,000. I'd love to see more elite codes take on, the mission and have Pride rounds in their codes as well. And we're starting to see that. The A-Leagues do a really great job. There's going to be, you might have seen a AFL game between Sydney and Essendon, which is really exciting. So just kind of continuing our progress and growing our impact and our reach across the country is really what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, perfect. Well, we really appreciate it, and we know that you're a great resource for our clubs as well. So, I really encourage any of our clubs, if you're interested in an education session, if you just want resources, Caitlin has been amazing in helping us as a competition with all of that already, but can certainly help you guys as well. So, I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, and good luck to all the teams participating in Pride Round for your league this weekend.